Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Wadier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Wadier, and I'm here, as always, with my good friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Fantastic, my friend. Excited for today's conversation. We are going to be diving into a conversation that we love because it involves fasting and involves ketones. One of our partners that we love, Keto-Mojo. We'll give them a shout out here in just a minute. But we're going to title today, Flipping the Metabolic Switch, and why fasting may not be enough to do so. Ooh. So before we dive into that, I want to welcome everybody in to the podcast. First and foremost, if you are new, welcome to the show. We have a shout out from Martita Molina just a few days ago. Easy to understand, 5-star review. Those are our favorite kind. So shameless plug. Drop a review if you got a moment. If you like what we do and you like what you hear, please do it. It helps us out dramatically. We're so grateful for the long-term listeners that continue to tune in and be on this lifestyle journey and fasting journey with us.
Heck yeah.
But Martita Molina says, I just started listening to the Fasting for Life podcast yesterday, and I can't get enough of it. I have been intermittent fasting for years, and I've seen and continue to see great benefits. Fasting is a wonderful addition to my healthy lifestyle. Couldn't have said it better myself. This podcast has provided me with a new information in an easy to understand way. I learned at least one new thing each episode. Now, that's really cool because that's like our entire thing is we want you to take one thing away. We say it in our intro, which I think is really good with some catchy music. Yeah, absolutely. And she says, thank you so much. Keep up the great work. You're helping many people. So thank you so much for taking the time to drop the 5-star review. That tells the podcast gods and goddesses of the world, whoever really knows what that means, that we're bringing value and ratings and impact with what it is that we do. So thank you so much. If you are also new and you're like, what are these guys talking about? Head back to episode 1. Learn a little bit more about who we are and why we do what we do, why we do this, why we do our challenges, why we have our resources, and why we are on a mission to pull people out of the blood sugar lifestyle-induced chronic disease matrix that we have here in the States and across the world. So,
yeah, the one that we were deeply entrenched in whenever we got started.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the elephant in the room before we hop in. We've had a handful of people reach out about mouth noises and lip smacking. And are these guys snacking on the podcast and the sniffling? So you know what? There's an elephant in the room. I'm just going to address it. Yeah, I've been fighting COVID/long COVID for over 6 weeks. Nothing life-threatening, just incredibly life-altering. Yeah. For some reason, after 4.5 years, it got me, or however long it's been. So I'm on the path to recovery. Definitely feeling a heck of a lot better. Nice. So if you are slogging through the additional noise and you get to this episode, you go, oh, well, that makes sense because there are no secrets here. Yeah, just hadn't thought about mentioning it before, even though I turned my mic down and our poor podcast producer, Brad, has done his best to minimize that. But damn, these microphones are good. Way different than back in the day recording on the $50 mic with the AirPods. So yeah. Good problems to have.
Yeah,
all right.
Thanks for bearing with us, guys.
Yeah. So diving in here to flipping the metabolic switch. So interestingly enough, Tommy, we partnered with Keto-Mojo a long time ago. And we teach this inside of coaching too, the power of knowing, right? The power of data. Now, it's a catch-22 for some, but if you're new to fasting, you've heard of ketosis. You've heard of the keto diet, right? When we got this article, we saw this article from Keto-Mojo. We're like, oh, wait, we sent it to each other in preparation to have a conversation around it. And there's a couple of like fasting for life kind of lifestyle application things that we teach, week in and week out and talk about in our challenges and on other episodes that really floated to the surface in terms of how we can apply ketosis and some of the unnecessary frustration that can come from trying to kind of, I don't like the word hack, but optimize this process, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. Because I mean, I feel like we all have an intuitive kind of innate push towards making some assumptions that the more that we do or the harder that we push, the better our results should be. So sometimes that leads into fasting, like more ketones are necessarily better, or higher ketone numbers are better. And I kind of just assume that the longer I fast, the higher my ketones are building up as far as in my blood. There's just a lot of assumptions that kind of go along with it. Another set of assumptions kind of comes around the fact that urine strips for ketones are much more accessible than blood or breath. They're easier to get, they're cheaper. And that's where most people will start with trying to measure ketones. And then there's the tricky part, though, that they were designed for measuring levels of ketoacidosis, mostly for type 1 diabetics. And so to take those over and to try to apply those to a nutritional ketosis, and using with intermittent fasting specifically for fat loss purposes, or for getting into nutritional ketosis so that you're in optimal fat burning mode and you're working on what we'll talk about a little bit more with regards to metabolic flexibility. There's a lot of erroneous assumptions that are kind of like built into that then lead to like a false sense of frustration that can then be bad for your fasting consistency as well. So this is the potential like negative feedback loop, negative loop learning that we kind of want to avoid, or help everyone kind of understand, so that you can, make the right assumptions, get the right feedback, and then, continue to progress with your fasting lifestyle.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the 3 different forms of ketones. We'll do a kind of an overview on all of that, just to make sure everybody's familiar and kind of understands the differences. And we'll talk about the body's fuel sources and the prioritization of that. But the article really is like the whole idea here is the intermittent fasting alone might not be enough to get you into ketosis. And here's why. Now, do you have to get into ketosis or nutritional ketosis or therapeutic ketosis to lose weight? Well, no, not necessarily. But the struggle bus will show up much more often if you can't get consistent flipping of this so-called metabolic switch. Your body will adapt. And there's so many benefits to improve your metabolic health by being able to do this and helping your body get there. So one of the articles, I want to highlight this. This is in the research that kind of backs up this conversation. It came from Flipping the Metabolic Switch, Understanding and Applying the Health Benefits of Fasting. And this article was in the Journal of Obesity in 2018. And it showed that suggesting that the metabolic switch from glucose to fatty acid-derived ketones, and we'll explain that in a minute, represents an evolutionary conserved trigger point that shifts metabolism from lipid cholesterol synthesis to fat storage to mobilization of fat through fatty acid oxidation and fatty acid-derived ketones, which serve to preserve muscle mass and function. So therefore, if I have regimens that induce the metabolic switch, have the potential to improve body comp. Moreover, the regimens also induce the coordinated activation of signaling pathways that optimize physiological function, enhance performance, slow aging, and disease processes.
I want all of that.
Right? It's like, wait, I came to fasting to lose weight, but hold on, what's this cool thing of like, what was all that cool stuff that you just
why
said?
else is this awesome? Yeah.
Wait a minute, right? So this concept applies to cellular molecular responses in fasting in terms of circulating biomarkers like IGF-1. I mean, you guys know what IGF-1 is now, and GLP-1s, right? That conversation about the Ozempics. We know that there's time restricted feeding and fasting affect the liver and the liver cells, muscle cells, the cardiovascular system, the nervous system, impacts on body composition, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to go through kind of an overview here, and we want to be able to flip this metabolic switch, regardless if you're testing or not. You can head to the show notes, grab the link. the big bundle for Keto-Mojo with the new fancy Bluetooth monitor, which I finally got because Tommy made me order one because I still had the old school one.
I ordered it for you and sent it to
You
you.
did order it for me. I know. We've got a really big discount code there.
Yeah, it's cool.
It knocks it off like 50 or 60% off. I don't remember the exact amount, but
yeah, you only see it at the checkout stage too. Yeah.
Yes. Just wait till you get to checkout and you'll see the discount applied. But anyway, so we're going to go through an introduction. We're going to go through kind of a basic understanding of the metabolic switch where your body shifts from glucose to fatty acids. This typically occurs between 12 and 36 hours. Now, somewhere you're going, oh, bleep. I only fast 22 hours. Well, are you getting results? Is the scale moving? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about depleting the glycogen stores, the science behind ketosis, why fasting might not be enough, how to truly measure and what it means and what the levels, the ideal ranges should be. Then we'll talk about the most important thing is the strategies to enhance ketosis during fasting, and then talk about some of the common misconceptions or frustrations that go along with this process as well, because we know the benefits of ketones and ketosis are improved cognitive function, enhanced fat oxidation, aka fat burning, aka weight loss. There's anti-inflammatory effects. There's therapeutic effects in terms of neuromuscular and neurodegenerative conditions, and also the muscle preservation, which is one of the misconceptions of fasting as well. So, Tommy, let's talk first and foremost about this metabolic switch and how our body needs to shift from glucose to fatty acids and kind of what that looks like and this variance between 12 and 36 hours.
Okay. So we have multiple fuel stores within the body. So we can think about it like in the blood, we have circulating blood sugar. We also have fatty acids that circulate within the blood as well. But when we take in most meals, and let's talk standard American diet here, that's probably 50 to 70% carbohydrates. When we take in a typical standard American diet meal, then we're taking in a lot of carbohydrates at that point. And it's much less important to be able to do something with the fat and with the protein at that point. But usually we're intaking a level of carbohydrates and typically also very simple sugars that the body needs to do something with very, very quickly, because we can't go above a certain level of blood sugars circulating. So the trouble there is that we have to be very quick, very efficient at metabolizing sugar, and which means that we're going to have to take a lot of that and store it in fat stores, because we can only burn through so much sugar so quickly. So that means that most of us in the Western world, with ample food around and typically a lot of processed food available as well, means we spend most of our time in using the glycolytic pathway, the carbohydrate metabolic pathway. So the trouble there is that if we don't spend very much time going over to the other side of that, where carbohydrates are more restricted, this also happens with just food restriction in general, so intermittent or more extended fasting. But if we're not going through periods of more protein and fat and much lower on the carbohydrate side, then we're not getting very much time spent flipping the metabolic switch over to the ketogenic side of things, where we're able to burn fat and metabolize something besides carbohydrates so efficiently. And so that's where ketogenic diets, that's where very low carb diets, that's where carnivore and intermittent fasting, that's where some of the magic kind of lies. But the metabolic switching is not just a very, very quick process. It can take a while to kind of get more efficient with, but just starting to kind of scratch the surface and understand, I've been in more fat storage mode, or kind of like if the scale has been plateaued, if I'm typically energetically full rather than in a fat burning mode, then I'm probably spending more of the time in a sugar burning mode rather than a fat burning mode, unless you're deliberately, in a ketogenic diet.
And here's the reality. So we've mentioned carbohydrates here a couple of times already, is you're somewhere on a sliding scale. And to get into ketosis requires a reduction in carb, an increase in fasting, which forces your body to use up that short-term glycogen, that glycolytic pathways that you were just talking about. So the buckets of where that lives is we have a small amount that can live in the liver as glycogen. we have an unlimited amount that can be stored as fat once it slides to that far down the scale.
Yeah.
We have a very small amount in our blood, which is what you were talking about, where the body needs to, get that excess energy out of the bloodstream. And then you've got a decent amount that can be stored in muscle glycogen and muscle triglyceride or muscle fat, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the reality is that we've got anywhere from 18 to 24, maybe up to 36 hours of glycogen storage based on your metabolic flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
So you start fasting, you start testing your ketones, you're using the P strips, and you're like, wait a minute, this isn't working. Or maybe you do it one time, you're like, all right, yeah, this is great. I'm in. I got ketones, and we'll talk about P strips versus blood versus breath here in just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got these fuel tanks that you need to work through, so that even if it can take weeks to months to become fully adapted to more of a lower carb ketogenic type diet. Now, we're not talking like less than 10 carbs a day. We're talking 50, 60 carbs a day, right? 60, 80 carbs a day. Natural carbohydrates, not the refined processed stuff, where you should be able to flip in and out of ketosis. Like if you indulged at an event or a party or something, by next morning, you should be back in light ketosis. That's a healthy metabolic flexibility, but it depends on your starting point, and it depends on your food choices, your sleep, your stress, and these buckets of glycogen storage that you have, because your body has a prioritization of how it's going to burn that fuel. So if you just hierarchy 1 to 5 is alcohol, it like immediately shuts down fat burning, and it's going to then process the alcohol to get it out of your system because it's toxic.
And it's fuel as well.
What's that?
Acid and it's fuel as well.
It's fuel, yeah. It's 7 kilocalories per gram. So it's right in between your proteins and fat, your proteins and carbs, and your fats. Fats is 9 and protein and carbs are 4. So it's like its own macronutrient, right?
Yep.
So you got to burn through that. That's priority number 1 if it's in your system. Then you're going to go to carbs, right? So then you're going to burn through about 1,200 to 2,000 calories of storage capacity in carbohydrates, right? So that's about, if you're doing a day's worth of calories at 2,000, let's just say to make the numbers easy, that's 12 to 24 hours, right?
Sure, yeah. And that also depends on your frame size as well. So the more fat and the more muscle you have on your body, then the bigger those stores are as well.
Yep. And then you've got your protein. So that's number 4 on how your body prioritizes fuel burning. Now it's a very small amount. You really can't screw up protein.
Yeah.
That's why we say prioritize protein.
Yeah.
In every meal. And then you've got fat. So your body has to go through all that other stuff to get down to the fat, right? To burn the stores for winter, to tap into the winter storage, right? To tap into those deep freezes of excess that we have.
And this is why most of us don't spend that much time flipping the metabolic switch, because it's at the bottom of the hierarchy there. It's like it doesn't happen by accident.
Yep. So when we talk about the metabolic switch, a couple of things that I want to mention in terms of, I'm pulling up the research article here. We've got the benefits, right, of ketosis and what that looks like. When you look at the like why metabolic flexibility matters, we want to be able to transition in and out of this regularly, right? We want our bodies to be able to use ketones as a preferred energy source, which will in turn make life easier. You'll have less carbs. You'll have less cravings, You'll have less binges. You'll have better relationships with food. You notice your energy and your brain fog will go away. You'll have more consistent energy rather than the ebbs and flows throughout the day. Right, Tommy?
Yeah, less blood sugar volatility because you have less insulin chasing those blood sugar highs, creating those blood sugar lows as well, which then only helps to reinforce better sleep, fewer cravings, more consistency on the scale, because honestly, a lot of the scale volatility comes with depleting and repleting those glycogen stores too, because glycogen's heavy, because for every gram of glycogen that we also have to pull in 3 to 4 extra grams of water just to store that. So that's problematic, leading to volatility in the scale, which then leads to volatility in our level of motivation and or frustration with our fasting
compliance.
efforts. Yeah, and compliance too, right? Like if I set out to do a fast today, and no matter what the timing, the duration goal is, if my motivation is waning, or I jump on the scale and get smacked in the face or potentially rewarded, that can change my level of motivation. And if that happens over time, that's not good for my fasting consistency, right?
100%. So let's talk about ketosis here for a sec and just kind of outline what that process looks like. Because we talked about benefits. We talked about fuel prioritization. We talked about flipping that switch. So when we talk about the science behind ketosis, and maybe you've tested your levels or you haven't, or you've heard about it, but if you go to Keto-Mojo.com, keto-mojo.com, you'll see they have a bunch of infographics that are like super helpful. But the process of making ketones, because there is this entire market out there of exogenous ketones, which they fall right between alcohol and carbohydrates in terms of your body burning those off as energy before they can tap into long-term fat stores. So exogenous ketones help a lot with cravings, hunger, and energy, but they're kind of circumventing the natural ketone production process. And here's why that's important to know. Yes, you can use them periodically. I love, I can't think of the name right now. That's terrible. But they come in the containers and they're in my fridge. And I noticed it's helpful on high stress days. What the Keto IQ.
Okay.
And the taste, not so great, but in function, they do great in terms of muting my hunger on the high stress days or the poor sleep nights, right?
Nice.
So but the problem is I'm not in a fat loss phase right now or a weight loss phase, so that's fine. If you are, here's what happens. We want the natural ketone production process to take place. So when the body enters the fasted state, depletes the glycogen stores like we talked about, it shifts from using glucose as its primary fuel source to using fatty acids and ketones. This is ketogenesis. So 0.5 up to like 1.5, 2.0 is ideal for nutritional and weight loss ketosis.
Okay.
2.0 and above, if you're doing longer fasts or you're getting into that state more readily, then you're getting into the therapeutic levels of ketosis. And there's a calculation called GKI, which we will not go into now. We've done episodes on it in the past. But that will give you an idea of kind of where you're at in terms of a healing process, right?
Yeah.
So we're focusing on fat loss and ketone production for energy and flipping that switch. The process goes like this. Lipolysis. Fat cells break down the stored triglycerides into free fatty acids. This is why when we fast over time, we'll see triglycerides come down, right? Because you're breaking down those triglycerides into fatty acids and glycerol. Then beta oxidation takes place and those free fatty acids are transported to the liver and broken down into acetyl-CoA. Now we're going Krebs cycle biochem back in the day. Make this real simple here in just a second. This is when the acetyl-CoA is converted into ketone bodies, primarily acetoacetate and beta hydroxybutyrate. Now, I want to bring up the conversation of breath, urine, and blood here. Pee strips are measuring the waste product of the urine strips, the waste product of this ketone formation process. The breath is measuring the actual fat oxidation and fat burning because you lose your fat through your breath. Okay. What we truly want to measure and see if we are in ketosis is the beta hydroxybutyrate levels or the beta OHB, which is in your blood, which is why ketone finger stick testing is the most accurate in terms of ketone measurement.
So seeing how they're building up in the blood, and then also that goes together with what you were talking about as far as exogenous ketones, because if I'm bringing more ketones in and I'm taking my measurement, okay, I might be able to kind of pump up the numbers a little bit, but the point of looking at your own metabolic flexibility and your own nutritional ketosis levels is what is your body and like what's building up in your blood based on your own nutrition and your own fasting, rather than bringing in some a little help to kind of pump up the numbers. And so, and speaking of that too, you mentioned earlier about that range of when nutritional ketosis typically starts. And I wanted to come back to that for a second, because when you mentioned that, I believe you said 12 to 36 hours, right?
Initially, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's interesting too, because, really with high levels of consistent fasting, not having as much excess fat stores on your body. So maybe you've already burned through during a fat loss phase in the past, and maybe you're working on maintaining it, or maybe you don't have that much to lose. Your time, you could have a meal and you might find yourself in ketosis all through that meal, to where you were at higher levels of ketosis, and maybe it dipped down a little bit temporarily during that meal time and a little bit afterwards, but you may have never left nutritional ketosis. So it could be as low as 0 hours, to find yourself in nutritional ketosis. But then on the other side, that 36 hours, that might actually be 48 or 72 or 96 hours, depending on how you ate during your last few meals, how full were your glycogen stores, how metabolically flexible are you, how long was your last fast? Was it a clean fast? Was it a dirty fast? Was there some bulletproof coffee in there? Was there caffeine stress? Was alcohol involved at some point? A whole host of factors that might have nothing to do with the quality of your last fast too. So I want to separate those out so that we're not confounding them when we're going to measure like the quality of our fast or our metabolic flexibility, and then tying the result to another variable right there. Because I definitely did that before I started fasting, but when I was using some lower carb diets in the past, and started off with the urine strips because they were so easily accessible. I think a friend gave them to me one time, and it was like, what's going on? I completely changed my eating habits here, at least for a few days or for a week, and I'm not seeing anything, but I'm doing stuff completely different. Aren't I supposed to be seeing some ketones by now? So it can be a little tricky or confusing.
Yeah. And I want to go into the action of like how we're going to deplete glycogen stores, like how we're going to insulate ourselves, how we're going to get those results and not have those fasting frustrations that you just mentioned. Because ultimately what we want are the benefits of the ketones.
Yeah.
Like they're great for the brain. I mean, it's incredible for the brain. They pass the blood-brain barrier. That's a mouthful. And they preserve muscles. Like, so when you're fasting, there's always a concern about the myth of like, I'm going to lose muscle. No, you're not. Growth hormone goes up and ketones are muscle protective. It actually allows you, when you have higher ketone levels, to have better metabolic efficiency. We're not talking about metabolism. We're talking about energy usage and storage, which is regulated by insulin. You're going to have the decreased inflammation. We're going to have the neuroprotective properties in cognitive function that we see and in neurodegenerative disorders.
The brain loves ketones.
And you're also going to see an improved insulin sensitivity, right? So the stuff that Tommy's mentioning are the things that kind of get in our way. So I want to go through strategies to enter ketosis, Tommy, and I also want to talk about exercise and how we can use exercise to help deplete glycogen and get us there quicker. Because what we'll see when we get stuck in this fasting, kind of lower calorie, higher insulin, maybe our fasts aren't clean, bulletproof coffees, we're not having clean starts and stops to our fasting. Maybe we're not fasting long enough. You're going to get stuck in what we call like this keto transition, where you might feel some lightheadedness, some fatigue, some digestive distress, some mood changes. And you're just kind of stuck with the light switch half on, half off. Yeah. Right. And the light's flickering and you're going, dang it. So I want to transition into the action step, more like what are the strategies that we can help, flip the metabolic switch? And then ultimately, how can we use exercise or movement to help deplete that glycogen even faster?
Yeah, I think the first thing there, and I'm going to talk to my 5 years ago self here too, would be not looking at my next fast as like the opportunity to break that with a more indulgent meal that is more carbohydrate rich and dopamine inducing, that I'm looking forward to in a way that's not going to serve my next fast. It's not going to make it any easier. It's not going to help me get into ketosis any faster. It's going to make the process harder and take longer. And it's actually the fact that you could do a long fast, but if the meal that you ate before that was a bigger meal that was richer in carbohydrates or maybe more indulgent, like a lot of my meals were when I first started fasting, because just like bad habits and higher hedonic foods and just lots of not great food choices, because I didn't know how to incorporate those in a way that got me results. So there was frustration before I started fasting. So if I'm breaking my fast with more foods like that, then my next fast could be much longer, but very unproductive as far as ketone production, right? So kind of understanding that and making a deliberate shift towards some lower, or at least more controlled carbohydrate, higher quality carbohydrate, but lower quantity, is very, very helpful to make that transition into ketosis easier, smoother, more predictable, less frustrating, as well as it's going to make the next fast that much easier, because I don't have as much of the transition that's it's frustrating, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, we use a natural, unrefined, unprocessed like jasmine rice in our house, and we make 3 cups at a time. We make it in the Instant Pot. It's sticky rice. Kids love it. We make little rice balls. We make it in dinosaur shapes. My wife eats it pretty much every day. Before, if we did like our beef chili and we serve it over rice, I couldn't eat the rice. My blood sugar would go crazy. But now it's I don't have a lot. I have like maybe half a cup or 3/4 of a cup, and it's less than 200 grams. My blood sugar stays stable when I'm combining it with the meat and the fat, right, from the chili.
Yeah.
So we're not saying it's anti-carb. We believe that lower carb, less refined, less ultra processed, 100% less sugars, right? All of that. But that's going to help you reduce and deplete those glycogen stores more quickly. You don't have to go full keto recipe, keto lifestyle. Just prioritize protein and decrease your carbohydrates, right? Increase your healthy fats, and you pretty much got it.
Yeah.
We'll talk about exercise in a second. Some other things that can help get flipping that metabolic switch more quickly is hydration. And we're not talking just about water. We're talking about electrolytes. So you want to be using Redmond's Real Salt or Baja Gold or a mineral-based Himalayan salt, a mineral-based salt, an electrolyte supplementation. That's something that has sodium, potassium, magnesium, like Element, Element T. That can help if you're properly hydrated. That will help your cells deplete the glycogen, get rid of the excess water. I know it sounds counterintuitive, and help you with the transition from sugar burner to fat burner. So we definitely want to make sure that we're keeping our hydration, not drinking water, but proper hydration in place. And then the last 2 categories we're going to talk about are the fasting duration and frequency, and then exercise. So Tommy, let's go into the fasting duration and frequency. You talked about food decisions in and out, right? But if we have this variability of 12 to 36 hours, you're going to start to feel when you flip the switch, once you get more attuned or fat adapted, metabolically adapted as you go through this process, especially with fasting. So you're going to want to play around with your fasting windows. That's what we do in the challenges. We take you through some different windows that you probably would never have tried before. Right? We do like a 29-hour fast. We do a 36-hour fast. And we strategize what we call fast cycling. So we can extend those fasting periods without feeling deprived and not eating food. You can do a 36-hour fast and eat on both days. You just need to go from a late breakfast to an early to late dinner on the following day, and you can check that box. So you're not going a whole day without food. If you're like, oh man, I just can't make it past 24 hours. I get so angry. I don't feel good. I can't flip the switch. So the fast cycling is what we teach in the challenges, and ultimately what we use in coaching to really help you tap into flipping this switch and getting more metabolically flexible.
Yeah. And it's about that consistency piece, which we talk about a lot. But whenever we're talking about the actual fasting durations there, remember that it's not always that a longer fast equals higher ketones.
Right. So, oh gosh. You reminded me of my first 5-day fast where I tested on day 4 and I was like 0.3.
Right.
How am I not at like 10?
All right. I should be at 100 right now. And that's part of the counterintuitive, trickiness, which has to do with a whole host of factors. But the fact of the matter is, yes, like if you have more time to burn through the glycogen and through some more long-term fat stores, you're likely to see higher levels of ketosis, but that's on a relative basis. So maybe that's a difference between what would have been a 0.7 ketones versus a 0.8 or a 0.9. But also every fast is a little bit different. Every meal that led up to that fast is different, and the timing and the rhythm of it is different too. So there's no like, oh yeah, a 30-hour fast should be a 1.0 on my ketones or something like that.
Right.
And so we see that a lot when people start to use Keto-Mojo and have certain expectations. So just understanding that I feel like is a very important point, and knowing that finding a window, like go to the blueprint to fasting for fat loss. Take a look at some of the different windows and try out some that are a little bit different for you, or a little bit longer than what you've been used to. That can be a great way to kind of see better consistency with your fasting. That's going to lead to better consistency with your data as well, your blood sugar numbers, your ketone numbers. So when we look at something like, the 5-2 diet or alternate day fasting, different fasting protocols that are used a lot of times, some of those are going to lead to very inconsistent results. So just know that if you're not fasting the same way week to week, or definitely not day to day, expect some pretty big variations with your data, depending on what you're measuring, which would make sense. But also, if you're not measuring, then expect some differences in what happens on the scale, as well as, maybe some of those symptoms of, keto flu, like you mentioned earlier too.
Yep, 100%. Last thing I want to mention here, just a recap kind of overview. Talk about the metabolic switch. Go read the Keto-Mojo article as well. It's great. Look for the discount code if you've never done it or you want to try it. It's fantastic technology. It's super fun to learn what's happening in real time. And then we talked about the signs of ketosis and, why fasting alone might not be enough due to liver glycogen and short-term energy stores and your energy burn rate while you are fasting based on clean versus dirty, and your dietary choices or lifestyle or alcohol before or after fasts. Mm-hmm. Measuring ketosis, we talked about why beta hydroxybutyrate in the blood, the finger prick is the ideal way. Some strategies to enhance ketosis, right? We talked about going low carb, keto, proper hydration, electrolyte balance, getting proper sleep. We talked about common misconceptions. Longer fasts lead to deeper ketosis, right? Nope. Why am I not seeing ketone production? Well, you're not metabolically flexible yet. That can take time. The benefits, we talked about all of the benefits, right? The last thing, though, is another lever that we can pull is this exercise lever. And I want to keep this really simple. So incorporate physical activity to some degree. And I'm not talking about your, 60-minute boot camp. Okay. I'm talking about high intensity training, sprints, or resistance training, which is going to increase the mitochondria and the capacity of your energy stores or energy processing plants inside of your skeletal muscle. So the easiest thing to do here with ketone production and fasting is, when we look at typical aerobic exercise, we don't want low and slow. We want high intensity, so short bursts. So sprinting, hill training, if you're on a Peloton, let's say, short duration, high intensity, get your max heart rate up and then stop. You only need to do 3 to 5 minutes. That can deplete glycogen quickly. You can do resistance training, which is anaerobic, like weightlifting, resistance bands. That's going to deplete glycogen. You can also do walking, even just walking in zone 1, zone 2 with a ruck pack or even no ruck pack. If you got 20, 30 extra pounds, you've got your built-in ruck pack already.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like just go for a walk post meal can decrease your blood sugar by 30%, which will then allow your body to tap into those glycogen stores much quicker.
Yeah.
Tommy, any others that you can think of that can help move that needle quickly or simply? Because what we want you to do at the end of this episode, which is coming up here in just a minute, is pick 1 or 2 things and go do them. We want you to take an action today.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the exercise ones, because if you put those on the front end and the back end of your fast, and put a little bit of exercise, 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes after a meal, whenever you go to break your fast, I mean, you're accelerating the process very, very substantially. The other one that I wanted to mention was just sleep quality and sleep duration, because sleep is a superpower where your metabolic rate is going to decrease the lower the less amount of sleep that you get and the lower the quality of it, then the fewer calories you're going to burn at rest, because your body's going to be busy doing other things that are like prioritized away from the rest and rejuvenation period of sleep. So a little bit of extra sleep is like, if you've ever noticed, like you've talked about it at length, whenever you used to track your macros and things like that, you knew that if you had a poor night's sleep, that the scale was going to tick up, right?
Oh yeah.
So the opposite is true too, where if you get a little bit longer rest, a little more restful sleep, that oftentimes you have a dip in what happened on the scale. Well, where'd that come from? You had a little bit longer time, more efficient glycogen burning. So you can actually churn through some of those glycogen stores faster with a little bit more sleep and a little better sleep quality. But also that makes you more rested and set up for the next day. So you feel like your energy levels are higher the next day. Guess what? Your metabolic burn rate is higher as well. So prioritize that sleep and you'll be burning through those glycogen stores faster, likely to see better or higher levels of ketosis faster as well.
Yep, 100%. All right. So we started off the conversation today with flipping the metabolic switch. What does that look like? How we're going to insulate ourselves from some of the frustrations with fasting initially when you're like, man, I should be, scale's not moving. What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And so many different things in between. Head to the show notes, grab the blueprint, read the article, grab the Keto-Mojo, join a challenge, do something, take an action to get some support and to kind of insulate or to adopt, I should say, the fasting lifestyle. So regardless if you're new or old, beginner or advanced, we hope that something that we talked about today can absolutely, like the shout out today from the new 5-star review, that you can apply today, something you can take away today. That's ultimately why we do what we do. Let us know if we can help in any way. Reach out to us if you need it. Head to the show notes, grab a link. Tommy, appreciate the conversation as always, sir, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Bye.
So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.